So, welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, and this is the bi-weekly sync call. So, this is the special interest group where we basically we talk about PowerShell, we talk about provisioning, we talk about the PnP CSOM core and CSOM usage and all of the general SharePoint development topics. We do have also another call happening bi-weekly on Tuesdays, which is the SharePoint Framework bi-weekly special interest group call. So basically on every single Tuesday, we do have a community call where we talk about the latest on the SharePoint development. And apparently we seem to be still, after years of almost doing this, we seem to be having all the time, always new content to go through. So there's no harm actually having these calls. Obviously, it's up to you how often do you want to join on these calls, and all of these calls are getting recorded as well. So within 24 hours, you can find this call from the SharePoint Dev YouTube channel. Now, so in this call, we talk about provisioning, end-to-end solution design, automation, APIs, PowerShell, and all of that stuff. Today, we actually have two PowerShell-related topics, but I think the PowerShell, especially the PnP PowerShell, it is actually a development and extensibility story for SharePoint Online. If you're not familiar with PnP PowerShell, we highly recommend you to have a look on that one as well. AKMS SP PnP community is the address on the slide as well. That is the community location where in the Microsoft Tech community, where you can talk about or ask questions around the topics. And then AKMS SP Dev Docs is the official location of docs. Now, by the way, if you're joining from US side, we do know that this week and actually previous week where we had the SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group call, well, actually it's this week. It's this week when we have a slightly different timing, and then within the next 2 weeks we'll be back on the normal timing. That is due to the fact that US moves to summertime 2 weeks before EMEA. And this particular call and invite was created from Europe. So that's why you're seeing that small hourly change. And please remember to mute yourself. There's quite a lot of background noise again. Thank you. It's cool. Oh, good. Just making sure that there's no background noise. Cool. So let's actually get moving on today's topic. So today, well, obviously, before we go to today's topic, just to remind everybody, opportunities to participate within the community. We absolutely love people to volunteer for any demos around technical patterns or solutions or whatever you actually done, which you would like to show for others in the community. And the easiest way to actually do that is just connect or ping me in social media or in other channels or any of the other PnP guys, so we're able to then schedule you for a live demo. You can absolutely contribute in a GitHub, so all of our dev documentation is in GitHub, all samples are in GitHub, so you're more than welcome to contribute on that side as well. And then remember to provide feedback. That's the only way we can ensure that your issues are getting addressed as you find them. And just muting somebody again. Cool. So agenda for today. So we're going to talk about general announcements and updates on the SharePoint development. I did actually update slightly our roadmap slides just to let you know what's coming up there before the SharePoint conference in May, which will be again a big announcement timing. Then we're going to have a quick demos and talk about the hub sites, which are now in targeted release tenants, basically meaning the first release tenants. So that first release tenants was the old term for targeted release tenants, and now they started using targeted release tenant term, which personally I don't know, and that's highly confusing. But anyway, so the hub sites are now available, and they should be working in all of the tenants which has been marked to be in the targeted release option. Then Mikael Svensson is going to talk about how to connect to SharePoint Online using the app only with PnP PowerShell. This is useful, for example, if you have an Azure function and you want to call back on SharePoint Online and do modifications using an app-only option. So Mika is going to walk through that. And then Erwin is going to talk about the PnP PowerShell versus SharePoint Online PowerShell. This is a topic which we had a short chat in Twitter actually 2 days ago, but I think it's worth to have few slides and discussion around that topic as well. So kind of clarifying why do we have two different PowerShell commandlets and why do we keep on having two of them, at least for now. Good. And Mikael Svensson did test hub sites today. Yes, okay, excellent. So cool. So few announcements, few general topics which I wanted to mention. Obviously, documentation. Please remember the documentation is in the docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint. So AKMS SP DevDocs. This will redirect you to the docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint selection, and then from there you can find then the IT Pro documentation, PowerShell, and the SharePoint development documentation. Now, all of the latest guidance is in this location. We're working on getting more and more guidance up to date. There's some old topics there which still would require some level of polishment, but all of the new content, for example, for hub sites and site designs and ALM APIs and SharePoint Framework, for example, is published in here. MSDN will gradually be shut down due to the fact that it's not actually a scalable platform, and it doesn't support community contributions. So in the docs.microsoft.com, you can actually contribute. If you find a typo, you can actually contribute a fix on that, or even articles if from that perspective. The second thing which I always keep on the slides is the reminder on our issue list. So especially on the SharePoint Framework case, but also other issues are welcome in here, related on SharePoint development. So if you find an issue in SharePoint Online, potential bug in the service, please let us know and report the issue in our issue list. So AKMS SPDev issues, that actually is in the GitHub/SharePoint/SPDevDocs an issue list, where we then collect these issues and we do triage these in future 3 times in a week. So we actually try to track down all of these issues as fast as possible. Good. Other topics. So the hub sites, like mentioned yesterday, I don't know how many of you actually are aware of this. So and yesterday we announced this one in the Microsoft Tech community into, let's say, IT Pro side of the story of SharePoint, that the hub site are now rolling out to targeted release tenants. Yesterday we also released the documentation, the PowerShell documentation and REST API documentation for the hub site functionality. So there is an API how you can automate all of this stuff, for example, using just writing code, or alternatively you can absolutely use also hub site PowerShell commandlets. Now on this particular topic, I'm going to do a quick demo on how to associate a site to the hub site using a site design. It's not a massively, let's say, mind-blowing, because it's a quite simple thing to do. But before we go there, I wanted to have a quick look still on the roadmap, and then potentially have a quick look and discussion on the hub site and questions. So let me actually pinpoint a few things from here. So on the roadmap side, obviously the next big announcements on the SharePoint Dev side will be happening in SBC 18. That's the Las Vegas SBC SharePoint conference, which will be, I think, the pre-day start on the weekend 19th and the 20th of May, and then the actual conference is from 21st to 23rd of May. And that's where we actually announce all of the upcoming capabilities, and we openly talk about the things which we are currently already kind of working partly, and stuff which will be released in the Ignite timeframe. Before that, we won't have, let's say, humongous amount of, let's say, development announcements, but we're looking into getting the Groupify APIs out. We've shown the Groupify APIs quite a few times in the community calls. We'll absolutely do that again whenever that's actually coming to preview. That's now planned to come to review during this quarter. Well, not this quarter, sorry, next quarter. So starting from April. The target is right now April to get it to preview, but there might be still some last minute changes on that. Now, there will be also more branding options even before the SBC, or that's now the target. So adding a font functionality for theming, so to be able to define the fonts for your sites using the modern themes. And then there will be more site design actions. And these are basically the site script actions, which can be associated to the event of when site collection is getting created in SharePoint Online. So right now, currently we have a pretty limited set of site design actions available, like creating a list, associating site to the hub, and activating a theme and a few others. But comparing, for example, for SharePoint PnP provisioning, it is a super limited set of things. We're looking into adding capabilities like create a site collection, site column, site collection column, site collection field, and associate that field to the list. Also, creating content types using the site design script will be possible in the future. Now, when that I can't give you yet because it depends on availability of the resources who are writing this stuff and making sure that it's properly implemented. We're also looking into having functionalities like installing an add-in or SPFX solution to the site which is getting created from the app catalog, or activating an extension to the site from an app catalog. So you wouldn't always need to fall back on the Azure function-based extension model for site designs. And that's really trying to simplify this process as much as possible. Obviously, the ultimate thing for the provisioning will be in the future as well by falling back on the PnP provisioning and Azure-based modifications. Joel is asking on the branding options, fonts, will this include custom fonts or just select from a limited list? I cannot comment on that one for the time being because I don't want to actually spill the beans at this point. So we'll get additional information on that one whenever possible. That one was announced by our marketing this week in in San Francisco. So that's why it is mentioned now in here. Are we still looking for solutions that Microsoft Graph doesn't require pop-ups? Yes, so the ADAL.js requirement for Microsoft Graph thing is there due ADAL.js limitations. We absolutely welcome user voice entries and votes if that's bothering people for trying to get that one away. So we can actually then show the demand for the challenge around the pop-up and potentially get rid of it. Good. Few things around the hub site. So I'll do a quick demo on the hub sites and site designs and how we associate a site collection to a hub site automatically and what does it mean in practice. We did have a long hub site demo a few weeks back, like 4 weeks back. So I'm not going to actually repeat end-to-end on this stuff. But what I wanted to do here is to raise few questions which I got recently this week, today and yesterday, and while we're actually getting these hub sites out. So one of the questions what people keep on asking is that how do I select or create a site which is a hub site template? And the answer is you don't. You actually elevate an existing modern team site or communication site to be a hub. So any of your existing sites can be a hub site. And basically, like the question number 2 there, can I convert an existing site in my tenant to be a hub site? Answer is yes, that's exactly what you're doing. So you need to have an existing site. You need to create a site collection, a modern site collection. You can create that using the UIs in the SharePoint home or using, for example, PnP PowerShell. Whenever you have then the site collection or a site, you're able to elevate that to be a hub site. And then when it's a hub site, it's available for other site collections to associate them to the hub site. The second question here is around, or third question, is the site collection associated to a hub site automatically visible in the hub navigation? This was something actually which we chatted yesterday with Irvin, because Irvin thought that he missed the memo. He thought that all of the site collections which are associated to a hub would be automatically added to the hub navigation. And the answer is no, that's not how it actually works. So the hub navigation is controlled from the hub site. I'm going to show this one in practice and what does it mean from a modification perspective. Is the hub site navigation permission aware? An answer is no. There's no permission aware in the hub's navigation, which is getting leaked from the hub site to the child site collection. And can I disable the hub navigation if you want? Right now, the answer for that one is no. So whenever you associate a site to be part of a hub, you will also get the navigation elements visible there. So we're able to move from a site to the hub as easily as possible. And now, there has been few people asking that potentially they would like to have this navigation option as a optional, and that's a great enhancement idea, which we would absolutely like to get tracked in the user voice. What settings are derived? Is that the English? I don't know. Maybe it's Finglish. Derived from the hub sites. Themes and main navigation is basically the main things. Now, there's additional elements, additional things which is happening related in the context of hub sites, like you're able to search only inside of a hub. You're able to say, I want to have search results only inside of this particular hub site, and that's available also programmatically, which is a great thing. And the second thing is that you're able to aggregate news from all of the sites which are associated to a hub to the hub welcome page, which is a great capability as well at this one. Now, Philip actually has and I noticed that right away. So Hub App Catalog would be actually a great idea. So that's one good enhancement idea for the future related on hub sites, because no doubt it would be nice to be able to target a customization based on the hub, because the hub, the idea of the hub is kind of like organizational division. So if you have a larger company, well, it doesn't have to be that large. Typically, you have multiple different divisions, and division might even have their own branding. And using the hub sites, you can then tie in your site collections inside of the division grouping. And then having a app catalog in the hub level absolutely would make sense. That's a great idea, by the way. Good. Now, let's see, what did we have? Now, we'll have few demos, if I can actually get this one moving. Here we go. So I'm going to do a quick demo from screen sharing from my side around associating sites to a hub site using site design, quickly explaining how it can be done, super easy thing, and then talking about the impact of the hub site as well, just to repeat some of the stuff what we showed a few weeks back related on hub sites, and also showing the API documentation location on that. Then we'll have Mikael Svensson doing having a quick discussion on connecting to SharePoint Online using an app only with PnP PowerShell, and then Erwin van Hoonen, Mr. Van, is going to talk about the PnP PowerShell versus SharePoint PowerShell. Good. So let me actually share my screen and let's talk about the hub sites in a high level. And how do we actually associate an existing site to a hub site? Now, let me share my screen, and somebody needs to tell me whenever the screen sharing actually is completed. Good. Screen is getting shared. Somebody needs to tell me. Okay, so Luca got it, Bert got it as well, so I can actually start. So let's actually first do the UI level related on hub sites, and then we can talk about how was this functionality done. So first of all, we do have documentation on the hub site and the behavior and the functionality of hub sites in both support documentation or the end user kind of administrative documentation, and also in the dev documentation. But I'm going to pinpoint you to the right locations in a second. But let's actually create a site and associate that directly to an existing hub site. So in our case, we created a specific site design, which really is around joining Work Hub to an existing Work Hub site. Now, technically in real world, this probably isn't how you want to name your site designs. Most likely you would name your site designs by using something like project site, and then when you select the project site, it would associate all of the project sites to your project's hub. And then in the project hub, you might have, for example, guidance and additional information around the project processes and all of that. That would be the right way of thinking how it actually works. But from a demo perspective, we have a site design which is named as Join Work Hub Demo. So it is a demo site design. Let's call this Stockholm Adventure related travel tenant. So I'm trying to name this wisely. And let's actually create a new site. Creating a new site, probably many of you have seen this. It takes 5 seconds or 4 seconds, and that's brilliant. The site is already created. If I click finish, we can actually see that the site is created, and then the site design functionality actually starts applying those additional configurations as needed. Now, in this particular case, we create let me actually, wrong screen. Let me zoom there. So in this particular case, we create a two new sites, lists to this site, which is slightly secondary for our hub discussion, but we also associate this site to an existing hub. Now, let's actually quickly have a look on then what happened. So view the updated sites. I'm going to click that one. It's going to refresh, and there we go. We got a theme from the hub side, and the most importantly and most visible thing is that we got a hub navigation available in here. So that's basically now a navigation which is getting leaked or derived, or how do we, I don't know the right way of putting that, not from marketing, but it's getting visible from the hub site level. Just to demonstrate the navigation aspect in general, so obviously there's you can see multiple levels here. Somebody has created here a few different levels, and you're able to then have a hierarchical site collection here. Now, I can absolutely associate this site to another hub as well. So going to the site information, we can select, now that the hub functionality is available, I can actually see the hub site association. This is basically listing all of the hubs which are available within this particular tenant. And that basically means that I'm able to then associate this site collection to another hub, which will then derive again those hub related information like the navigation and the theme. So let's actually do that. I'm going to associate this newly created site to Lapland hub, which isn't really that logical because Stockholm isn't in Lapland, but pretty close in Northern Europe. So let's actually associate Stockholm Adventure. Let's actually do Adventure and associate that to the Lapland hub, and we can see the visual impact of doing that. And there we go. So we can see that now the custom theme, which is dark in the Lapland hub site, is getting leaked on this site, and basically we now see also a different set of navigations which is getting visible within the site. So now if I go to the Lapland hub site, so this is the Lapland hub site, now we're there, I can actually see that I have a navigation visible, and I also have that edit button visible for me to start editing the navigation. So I can then add basically navigations here. This is not permission aware, so I can actually have here, let's say, let's be Microsoft friendly and do Bing. Hey, I'm working in Microsoft, maybe I should be using Bing always. Now let's actually put that Bing there and save. And that means that now if I go back on my Stockholm site, so let's see, if I move back, no, that's a Helsinki site. Where's my Stockholm Adventure? Okay, so let's see, where did my Stockholm go? And Adventure, sites, Adventure,
is in the top left following section. You see
yeah, it actually updated itself there. Thank you. So let me click there, and now we can actually, now we're in the site. Let me actually refresh. We should see the navigation. There is a small caching on the navigation, so I do not see that yet. But if I refresh a few times, we should see actually the additional navigation popping up on the main here. Right now, it's the Bing is added on the Lapland hub side, but it's not yet visible on the child one. Again, it's around caching and performance of making that happen. Good. What else was I supposed to do in here? Now, like mentioned, any existing site can be associated or promoted to be a hub, and then we wanted to have a quick look on the hub association. So what I've done here, I'm in Visual Studio Code, and I'm using just the PowerShell. So I've connected to my admin side. I'm using SharePoint Online PowerShell. We talk about the difference between that and PnP PowerShell later today. I can actually get all of my existing hub sites. So I can see all of my hub sites which are available. And then if I want to associate in my site design a site to a hub site when the site design has been created, I need to use the associate hub selection or JSON. So let me actually just show where all of this stuff is in the documentation. So if I go docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, we'll land on the SharePoint main documentation, and at this point you were able to select, are you a SharePoint server or are you a SharePoint developer? I'm rather a developer than a server. And then if I go to the SharePoint development site, I can actually extend the features tag in the left navigation. We pretty recently introduced this one as the way of grouping things. We're trying to figure out how the table of content will work in the future. And in here, I can first of all find information around hub sites, where we have overview of programming with SharePoint hubs. And this one, for example, includes the REST documentation. So all of the REST APIs and how you're able to get the hub sites and all of that stuff. But it also includes references to the PowerShell, which are actually documented in a slightly different location in the docs.microsoft.com under the official SharePoint PowerShell documentation. But what we want to do within our site design, in the site design, if I extend the site design and extend the JSON schema, I can see from the left side join a hub site, and that's basically a action which will give me the capability of joining that newly created site to the hub site. So that will basically make sure that whenever the new site is getting created, it is getting associated to the existing site. So coming back on the PowerShell, let me go back in here. I have a get SP hub site. In our case, we wanted to, I think we actually, well, basically the idea is that you get an ID of the hub site, and then in our case, that should not be needed. So let's see if I'm actually, do I need to connect? No, I need to connect. Okay, so let me do this one more time. And let me actually copy the information so I can show the right details here. So signing in, and I almost actually set the password out loud. I've done that in one of the webcasts, which is pretty awkward because that means that you need to then change the password. So connecting to the service, now I can do get hub site and just double checking that it's actually working properly. And there we go. Let's do a CLS and execute that one with F8 again. There we go. So that's working properly. For site designs, we need to create the site designs using the JSON definition. In our case, we do have quite a few site designs already available here, but I'm actually interested on the one which was around associating joining to a work hub and demo site, and that ID is EF87. So let's actually get that site script. And in this site script, there was quite a few actions, but one of the action is the verb join a hub site, and basically that's it. We have a hub site ID where the site is getting associated, and that's pretty much all we need to do. So this way, whenever somebody creates a new site based on that selected site design, the site is getting associated to a hub site. And obviously, by following up on the guidance and documentation, documentation for hub sites, you can absolutely do this programmatically as well. So if you have your own self-service site collection creation tooling, and you still want to associate a site to a hub site, it would be then site/join hub site and the hub site ID as the REST operation. So relatively simple and logical operations from that perspective. And yes, quickly on Nick's comment, this is Visual Studio Code running in PowerShell mode. So it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Cool. I think that's it from my side. So let's flip back on the presentations, and there's one slide which Mikael will explain, and then Mikael can actually start sharing his screen for the demo. Let's see if we can get the presentation back, and we did. Awesome. So moving on here, and Mikael.
Thank you. Yeah. So my demo will be around using PowerShell to connect SharePoint using app-only tokens using ADAL. So just a brief introduction what ADAL is. That stands for Azure Active Directory Authentication Libraries, and it's an application registration which will allow you basically to elevate privileges when you talk to SharePoint or the Microsoft Graph or any other API which is available. It means you not running in user context. Very useful in, for example, provisioning scenarios, or if you have some management scripts running. As I said, the scenario here is automation, and we'll be using a self-signed certificate to do this. So what we've done in PnP PowerShell is actually creating a new commandlet, which lets you generate a self-signed certificate. And there's also a sample link there on how to run this sample. So the idea here is you generate the certificate. You can, of course, keep the PFX file if you want, or you can just keep the base 64 strings for the key and the certificate itself, which you then could use in environmental variables or in Azure Key Vault when you run your automation. So I'll take over as presenter. I will share my screen. So I'll basically just run through this sample. So if someone can let me know when they can see my screen.
I see it.
Right. So here's the sample. So the steps required there is basically 1, create a certificate, create an ADAL application, and then we'll run the commands. So if I go to my PowerShell here, so first we will create a certificate using the new PnP Azure certificate commandlet. So if we just run this, so by default, it will use pnpcontoso.com as a subject. You can, of course, change this yourself. There's parameters on the commandlet. You can check the help for what the parameters are. By default, it will last for 10 years. You can make it up to 30 years, because if you create a certificate which lasts more than 30 years, at least in my experience, the ADAL app will not validate the certificate. And here's the key credentials, and we also have the certificate and private key. So the key credentials here is what we will need to get into the ADAL app. So I'll just copy that into my clipboard first. So if I go over to my ADAL here, so let's go to Azure Active Directory, app registrations, and we'll create a new one. Let's call this PnP SIG call, type of web app API in order to do app tokens. The URL here doesn't really matter, so I'll just valid. I'll just do my domain PnP, and then let's do create. So here I get the application ID, so I'm going to copy that, which is needed when we connect, and I will put this into this variable. So that's ready for afterwards. The next part, of course, now I added something else to my clipboard, so I need to do this one more time. So if I edit the manifest first, you have a section here called key credentials. We'll just paste that in there. So this is the part which tells the ADAL app to be aware of the certificate. So this is actually the certificate signature being used. So let's save this, and if we go back to settings, and we need to add some permissions since we want to talk to SharePoint, so that means we need to add SharePoint as the API, and we have SharePoint Online down here. Select. Of course, if you need to talk to the Microsoft Graph, you could add that as well. So you could use the same ADAL app to talk to both the Microsoft Graph and to SharePoint Online. And we were doing application permissions, so let's have full control over all site collections. Select that and click Done. And then, of course, the most important part, click Grant Permissions. If not, everything would fail. Okay, so now that is done. So here's my client ID. So basically what I do now is I connect PnP Online PEM certificate, and that's the certificate base 64 string we have here. And then the private key, same as you have here. And then we have the tenant, the client ID, and the SharePoint site URL. So let's connect this one. That went well, and now if we do get PnP list, we should get all the lists in my root side collection. Yep. So that's basically it. So that means instead of having a PFX file, which you might need to update and upload that, for example, into an Azure function or a job you run, you could just keep these strings as variables, as I said. Of course, if you want, you can also generate the certificate, and you can say there's a parameter here to save as, let's see if you can find it. Yeah, there's an out parameter, so you could save it as a file as well if you want, and then you can of course connect using the certificate path, which has been there for a while as well. So that's basically the demo. Yeah, so very useful for automation scenarios, and then storing the certificate as keys. Or if you need a self-signed certificate for something else, it might be easier to use this and make cert. I don't know. All right.
I think that's highly useful thing, absolutely, for automation, like you said, and it's good to get covered from a video perspective. Now, let's move back on the slides for a second. I think we have Irvin coming up next to do a few slides around the role of PnP PowerShell versus SharePoint Online PowerShell, and I'll absolutely participate on that discussion. And then we'll have time for Q&A, additional Q&A today as well. But Irvin?
Yep.
Maybe
I should explain why. Maybe I should explain why you called me Mr. Van.
That's fine.
2 years ago, I was attending the Kitchen, which is an event talking about SharePoint, and they were handing out automated accounts. They based it on your last name, and English-speaking people are usually very confused with Dutch names. My name is originally Dutch, so my name is Van Hunen. So they generated my account, and my account was Van. And from that moment on, I'm called Mr. Van among some certain people. So it has nothing to do with my size or my abilities. It's just my last name. Just saying that. Right, so I don't have any demos as such, so I'm not sure. We don't have to necessarily move to my screen. Just stay on your screen, Bessa, if that's okay. So what I will talk about is the SharePoint Online Management Shell versus the PnP PowerShell, because sometimes we get questions about there's like similar commands, or why can't you just group everything together and do it in one go? And I would like to address a bit of the differences between the target audiences of the two libraries and also a bit of the reasoning behind them. So if you take the SharePoint Online Management Shell, is very much focused on tenant level tasks, creating a site collection, doing administration with users and groups, uploading site designs, etc., etc., etc. So that's the level of which the SharePoint Online Management Shell works. They're usually, but not always, I have to, I'm pretty proud of that in a way, but they're not always first to market when it comes to supporting an API, but most of the time they are. So when something new comes out, it's the Microsoft engineers that build it into the SPO Management Shell. So that's where that's their playground. They build things in there, and that's how it comes out on the market. It has very limited focus on artifacts because they focus on tenant level, so they don't do things with like stuff that happens inside the site collection. The PnP commandlets is focusing very much on the developer, the administrator, or DevOps tasks, and focus on things to do inside the site collection. And we do have support for tenant level actions or tasks where they are relevant for development or developers or administrators that work in site collections. So for instance, if you are actively developing a site design, you want to be able to test that site design. So that's why we have commandlets available to upload a site design, upload a site script, associate together, and apply them to a site. But the main focus of PnP PowerShell is on artifacts, creating artifacts inside collections, doing things with content types, fields, lists, etc., etc., etc. So that is the main difference. Now, we got a question the other day on Twitter, is like, why can't you combine them? And theoretically, we couldn't. There's nothing holding us back other than there's quite some organizational effort involved in getting the two of us aligned, e.g. the PnP commandlets and the SPO commandlets. It's an ongoing discussion we're having. It's ongoing talks we have. So it might happen in the future, but right now we're staying separate. The main difference also, it would mean effectively that the SPO commandlets would become open source, because it would make no sense that we suddenly go closed source with our commandlets, the PnP commandlets. So if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the main differences between the PnP commandlets and the SPO commandlets is how we connect to the site. So with the SPO commandlets, there's only one site collection. Actually, made a typo on that deck, I see. But the SPO commandlets only allow you to connect to your tenant administration site. If you specify another site collection, it will say, nope, you need to connect to your tenant administration site. Whereas the PnP commandlets allow you to connect to basically any site, be it the tenant administration site or any other site collection in your tenant. Now, what we do internally in the PnP commandlets is that we recognize, or we know the commandlets are aware of the fact that they have to do something against the tenant administration site. So if you're not connected to a tenant administration site, we will connect to that site for you behind the scenes. We effectively clone the connection and we reuse the credentials and we connect to the tenant administration site. And this works pretty well. You don't even see it happening. And when the commandlet is done, by the way, we switch back to the old site collection. So in the first example here, you see that we connect to the root site collection of the tenant, and then we create a new PnP site. Officially, we would have had to first connect to the admin site and then create a new PnP site because we're calling a tenant level API here. But the commandlets, the PnP commandlets, figure that work out themselves. If you use the connect SPO service commandlet, you have to connect to the admin site, and that's where the typo comes in. I connect to contoso.sharepoint.com, and I should have written contoso-admin.sharepoint.com. But then you can actually reuse the credentials if you want to. That's actually something that Mikael developed. But you can say connect PnP online. You have to specify the URL. And now we're back on the other slide. Can you go, Vesa, one slide on? Thank you. So if you then connect to PnP online, you can just say -SPO management shell, and you also have to specify the URL. And then it will use the credentials that you use to connect with SPO service. My experience is that if you do them immediately after each other, you might get actually an error message. You have to wait a tiny bit, give it a few seconds, and then do connect PnP online. I will actually have to talk to Mikael about that. Maybe he has an idea what's going on there. So there's two ways of connecting to your tenant. There's actually many more ways of connecting to your tenant, but these are the two ones that I would like to highlight. So if you use PnP, you don't really have to think about connecting to your tenant admin or to a site collection. You just connect to the site, to your tenant, and then you start to use the commandlets. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I said, that we have a sort of a subset available in PnP that focuses on tenant level activities, and it's actually quite a list already, and it will be growing most likely in the future. There will be more and more, but they're all focused on things that typically a developer would like to do. So things like the register SPO hub site that Vesa just demoed, that one is available also in PnP, but then it's obviously called register PnP hub site. They are parameter compatible. So it's just a matter of replacing SPO with PnP, and you can use the PnP version. And all the commandlets are there. So for hub sites and associate and hub site, now you see there's a little grayed out there. It says connect PnP hub site and disconnect PnP hub site is grayed out. And that's because the SPO management shell, they renamed the commandlets. They were first called connect SPO hub site and disconnect SPO hub site, but then they renamed them to add PnP hub site association. So we also made that change in the PnP one. So setting tenant level parameters and getting tenant level parameters, app catalog management, CDN management, site design, site scripts, themes management, applying a theme and receiving the themes, creating site collections, creating classic site collections is still there, getting the templates and storage entities. So it's already quite a list. And as I said, every time a new functionality comes out and it applies to developer or DevOps work, we will most likely create an equivalent of those commandlets in PnP. So you don't have to venture off into the SPO management shell. So basically, it's only one commandlet module to install, and there you can connect with, and you're done. So instead of moving over. Another reason we started to do this is that if you followed the news a bit about PnP, we actually started to port PnP sites core and CSOM to .NET Standard, meaning it works on other platforms, and the SPO management shell is currently not available for things like a Mac or Linux. If you want to do these tasks on those platforms, you would have to have an equivalent with PowerShell. You would have to have an equivalent PowerShell module, and that's why we exposed these commandlets in PnP. So that's a bit of the background. So concluding again, yeah, in an ideal world, we would like to combine them together in one module, only one module to download, and you're done. That might happen in the future, but not at any time soon, at least. So for now, we still have separate commandlets.
Good. I had a small technical issue. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah.
I missed it on the ending. Now,
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'll reconnect. Thank you, Patrick. It doesn't work anymore. So on the combining of the two different PowerShells, so it's just I think the biggest thing why that is blocking is simply because we have tens and tens and tens and tens of engineers in SharePoint Online, and combining these to completely open source model would be a massive process change, like Irvin already mentioned during his discussion as well. So we would have to figure out how do we ship and develop stuff which isn't yet capable or available externally, but still already internally and all of that. So it gets slightly complicated. That's why actually it is more flexible that the PnP PowerShell it is its own thing right now, because it only controls, it's only driven by the open source initiative. Well, surely we in Microsoft, we help on that, but it doesn't have a dependency on internal engineering tasks. Now, on the questions on the Q&A. So there was a quick random discussion on the iron window, by the way, on the DOM injections and SPFX. I just want to mention and be super clear on that. It is not recommended in modern SharePoint, in SharePoint Online, to do DOM injection. Now, we cannot block you for doing that. You can absolutely do that, but the whole purpose of SharePoint Framework is that there would be, in quotes, railed experience, a guaranteed experience for you to customize SharePoint. Even though we modify SharePoint Online UIs, your customizations will still work. Now, if you would have a dependency on DOM injection, you basically assume that the DOM is an API, it's an interface, and it's not. And then whenever we change the DOM structure of the HTML page, your stuff is getting broken. So, not a good idea. Now, with Vincent, we chatted about this one in Twitter for the Q&A, async methods inside Score. Vincent, if you don't mind, actually, you can absolutely unmute yourself if you want to explain what's the question related on that.
Sure, thank you. So the idea is that the CSOM recently provided an async method for execute query.
Yep.
And a couple of weeks ago, I also issued a pull request to implement execute query and retry. And now the goal will be to provide top-level async methods for any kind of extension method to support async calls and stuff like that. I know there are discussions on GitHub around that going on. I started writing some code. Now it's kind of stuck. So my question is, what would be the best way to coordinate to be able to efficiently provide those methods as a community? As I know it's a pretty a big investment to make.
That's a good question.
So, can I chime in there?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I saw your pull request, Vincent, and so we already implemented the async retry. The reason why we didn't completely merge the pull request and your proposed methods is because we're looking into the best way to have those async calls being done. Like async call easily works in a console application, but if you go to other applications like forms applications or WPF applications, there might be we have some issues with deadlocks. We're trying to fix those, so that was some testing that went for a while. I think that looks good right now. There's one other related issue around async with the core version, so the one running on the .NET Core, which behaves slightly different, which needs to be investigated. So once these things are kind of clarified, and we have a model that works and that is proven, then we can happily take your contributions, and we can take more of these, because indeed, as you mentioned, there is a lot of work to do to make more async extension methods, and it's a good thing to have those async extension methods. So it's definitely very valuable work that you're doing, and really great that you want to contribute to that. But we first want to have things clarified before doing a big change. Otherwise, we have to maybe update all the existing work that you did.
Thank you very much. It would probably be good to open a separate issue for that and post the progress somewhere, so this way we don't have to jump on the call to know what's the progress and how things are going. I don't think I've seen any issue to track the progress of resolving async implementation for all different scenarios, basically.
But yeah, makes sense. Thanks for that.
Good. Some other questions. I'm just double checking the discussion. There was a questions related on ACS and the ACS support the ACS support will be shut down by Azure AD partly in November. And that one does not, however, include anything related on SharePoint add-ins. So the ACS support for SharePoint add-ins will remain. So that does not mean that you need to do any modifications within your existing deployments related on the fact that, in quotes, Azure AD is shutting down ACS, because that's not really precisely true. Now, we will have an official statements on that one pretty soon in the dev.office.com/blogs. We need to still double check certain things, but for add-ins, there's no actions needed. Everything will continue working as such, and that's the current status related on that discussion with Azure AD people. Now, there might be changes needed for other areas in SharePoint. For example, if you have an on-premises SharePoint which has been associated to SharePoint Online using ACS, all of that stuff is still under, let's say, clarification. But for add-ins, we are cleared, which is a great thing. Now, there was a question related on how many sites can be associated to a hub site. I'm not aware of any actual technical hub number limitation on that, so we do not have at least official recommendation related on how many sites could be in a hub. So you could have potentially tens of thousands of sites in the hub site. Now, it might be that we'll provide some level of a recommendation at some point. We are right now in preview mode, so we haven't actually yet gone GA related on hub sites. So that's something we potentially to follow up on slightly later. Then Ian had a question: when you elevate a site to a hub site, will the template name update in the new admin center? And if so, blah, blah, blah. The answer is no, that's not what's going to happen. We do not change the template. The template remains exactly the same. So any site, any given time, can be, in quotes, marked to be a hub and then de-hubified. I don't know what's the right term for that. De-hubify. So you can hubify a site and then you can de-hubify a site any given time. So, which is really important to realize as well. So you're able to do that, and that doesn't change the underlying template. It just basically says that, hey, this is now a hub site, and then it's available to get the other sites to get associated to. So that's really how it actually works. Just checking questions. Is it possible to run invoke PnP site design with Azure AD app permissions? It should be. I don't think we have checked that one.
I think it should be. It's just CSOM behind the scenes, effectively. So
yes, yeah, it is a CSOM operation. I'm not aware of any.
But there has been some of the calls which hasn't worked before. If it does, so is it a CSOM call? Yeah, then it should probably work. If it's a REST call, it might not work.
No, it's a CSOM call.
All right.
A CSOM call. Yeah.
Good. Who's volunteering to stress test app sites? Let's not stress test that. Well, it's obviously on engineering to do proper stress testing on that as well. Someone who loves 429s. So on the throttling side of things, but there was a, how would I put it? There was a general wider issues related on throttling during February. We should be now cleared from maturity of the throttling, or the throttling numbers should be significantly more down. Now, if you have random throttling issues and you're running into this throttling without any reasons, please go to our issue list and let us know which tenant, when, and we can actually investigate what's causing that throttling. So we can then investigate if it's an issue on our side, or if it's actually you hitting us so hard that it's that we need to throttle you away. The throttling, basically the whole idea of throttling is to make sure that the service is healthy. So that's where the throttling requirements are coming from. Now, there has been small mistakes related on throttling assignments, which then has been visible on the behavior of throttling. We are currently working on a updated guidance on the throttling and updated clarifications on that as well. Seth Gautam is asking any ETA on native CSOM methods for creating modern team and communication sites. Want to use with app-only permissions. Now, the fact that it would be a native CSOM method doesn't mean that it supports an app-only. The app-only support for modern team sites and modern communication sites, it's still under internal discussion in engineering. There are a certain group of people who don't want to actually do that, and then there's a certain group of people who are pushing that, well, we need to do that because it has to have an app-only support. Now, I do highly recommend, if there's a user voice entry for having an app-only support for creating these sites, we would actually get votes on that entry. So we're able to show the demand, or you are able to show the demand for app-only support for creating modern sites, because that would help on prioritization on our internal discussion. Good. AC is reminding us on the survey. So there is a state of SharePoint development survey organized by Voitanos and Rencor. Please go on and answer on that one, because that actually gives us additional insights also for Microsoft people around the people and how people are doing their development on top of SharePoint, and also SharePoint on premises. Stefan, there's hopefully this is the second question. Is there any documentation SPFX on SharePoint 2016 on-prem and that uses Node v6 LTS and won't work 6.8.0? Now, the on-premises SPFX support in SharePoint 2016 is only for SharePoint Framework 1.1. So you can actually use a SharePoint Framework version 1.3 for on-premises development, but inside of the packages, whenever you're creating the solution, we actually use SharePoint Framework 1.1. SharePoint Framework 1.1 does not support Node 8.0 or 8.x version, so we cannot actually use Node 8 on that side, unless there's certain fixes or workarounds to make it work actually within an older version of SPFX, but that for now it is 6.x LTS version which you would need to use. Now, on that particular topic, I know that we need to do a better documentation on what is supported, and much more clearly define the structure for the on-premises side as well. The SharePoint 2019, which is coming later this year, which has been announced, we have publicly already said that SharePoint 2019 will support modern UIs, modern experiences, which also means that it will support much newer version of SharePoint Framework. And the version will be the version which will be from where SharePoint Framework is when the forking of SharePoint Online to SharePoint 2019 will happen. Technically, that's what actually happens there. Maybe potentially I should talk about that one within the next special interest group call. Dun, 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 dun. Now let's see what else do we have. Get PnP site design skills 401 using ADAL 401. Okay, so that's a comment from Mikael.
Yeah, so just so if you connect to the admin endpoint, then it works.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a solution. You just need to connect to whatever tenant-admin, and then it should work.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Just on a throttling comment from Joel, that is pretty much as expected. 1,200 sites is actually quite a lot. We do understand that people need to be able to do that from a migration perspective, but then you can actually get some throttling issues because that's actually quite a lot of site collections. Stateofsharepointdevelopment.com URL is over there. I think site summary. Cool. I think we've gone through all of the questions. We pretty much. The Philip is asking the classic extension bug. So the extension bug is related on events when we are moving across the pages and applications. Well, technically they're technical applications in our internal language. There are certain scenarios where we move between the search UI, for example, and move back where the events are not properly raised. That bug has been assigned to the feature group who is working on that one. They have committed on fixing that. I do not have an ETA for it, but it's under development right now. So hopefully by next SPFX special interest group call, I can actually give an update on that. But good reminder, I'll follow up with the people to make sure that they do understand that this is absolutely critical because it is a super important thing to get fixed. But I think that's it. We ran out of time for this one. It's 6 p.m. on my time, my current location in the location where I am. We started, it's 9 a.m. in Pacific. So it's time to actually close for this one. The recording will be available in the YouTube channel within 24 hours. So thank you everybody for questions. Please also give us feedback related on the fact that do you want to have an extended always 15 minutes in Q&A in the end on these calls? I think it's actually kind of beneficial to start with the demos and a summary and 2 demos and then 2 to 3 quick demos and then a Q&A. Because in many times we've kind of run out of Q&A time in the past, and I think we need to start focusing on that one for getting some answers on the random questions. But thank you everybody. Thank you Mikael. Thank you Erwin. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your feedback. And please report the issues on our issue list. Keep the feedback coming so we can help you to be successful with SharePoint online and on premises. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.